professional engineer. Then they discipline. They make sure that people practice skillfully, ethically, professionally. And then they enforce compliance. They make sure that people are practicing skillfully, ethically, and professionally. Businesses are also regulated by APEGGA. So companies that have the term engineering, or companies that claim to be doing engineering work, they are also regulated, and they also have certain standards and requirements that they have to adhere to. So the registration criteria and what we're going to be looking at today: 5 criteria: academics, experience, professional practice exam or the National Professional Practice Exam, good character and reputation, and English language competency in Alberta. In Quebec, it's French. The reason for the English language competency is because all the laws, codes, standards, business practices in Alberta are in English. If you're going to be legally responsible for the work that you're doing, you cannot be held legally responsible for work that you're doing if you don't understand the language in which it's written. Okay? So for that purpose, there is a English language competency requirement. So again, because of you're an audience of newcomers, this kind of question comes up a lot. What's the difference between professional member and foreign licensee? A professional member, and that's I think what all of you are going to be working towards, is, in your case, a professional engineer. Canadian citizen or landed immigrant, meeting all 5 licensure criteria, so the one that we saw with the house before. Residency in Canada or Alberta is not a requirement. Okay. Foreign licensee is not a Canadian citizen or landed immigrant. They must meet all 5 licensure criteria, and residency in Canada or Alberta is not a requirement again. The difference here is citizenship or landing status. All of you are familiar with this term, temporary foreign worker visa, right? Temporary foreign worker visa. A lot of people working in Alberta and doing things in this province come here as temporary foreign workers on a temporary license. Well, engineers can also come here as part of that process, and they can do engineering work. They can have full engineering responsibilities with a foreign license. Okay? They don't have to be Canadian citizens, but they still meet all the 5 licensure criteria as talked about before. Some people will ask about this, well, how, that's kind of confusing, a Canadian citizen or landed immigrant, but not a resident of Canada. Well, you know this. Some of you are landed immigrants today, right? Or citizens. You may go to the States. You may go to another country and continue to practice engineering. At the same time, you can be an applicant of APEGGA. And you can continue to hold a PM's license if you attain a PM's license, as long as you're doing work at the same technical level under the same standards. So people that you know at home right now who have their landing permits, and they might think, well, I'm not in Canada, I can't really start the process. They can. They can start the process of application to APEGGA.
Question.
Yeah.
You say the residence in Canada or Alberta is not a requirement. So if I become registered engineer and then I moved on later after 2 years to Ontario or Manitoba, I don't know, would that still valuable there, or I have to do another registration in that province?
If you want to work in that province as a professional engineer, you'll also have to have a license in that province.
But this one will be some kind of exchange, or you go from from scratch again?
No, it'll be a bit of an exchange. They'll just transfer the license from one province to the other, and actually you'll hold both simultaneously. Okay. That will be discussed in this presentation. It's not a difficult process once you're licensed in one province. It's very easy. Members in training. I think there's a couple people in here who will be applying as members in training. In this case, EITs. Members in training only meet or need to meet 2 of the requirements: academics and good character and reputation. There's no experience requirement because MITs are people with less than 4 years of experience. Okay. So once you submit all your documents and you filled out all the paperwork and you hand it into APEGGA, oh, go ahead.
I have questions for the previous slide.
Yeah.
If I applied APEGGA, can I call myself as an EIT, or I have to separate apply for EIT?
If you apply for a PEng license,
Yeah.
and
Before it granted, right?
right,
For example, I applied yesterday.
Yeah.
So from today, if I'm looking for a job, can I call myself EIT?
no,
No.
no. They will have to evaluate your academics, your experience, your English language competency. They'll have to speak to your references before they offer you any kind of designation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is that necessary to obtain an EIT before PEng?
No.
No.
No. For example, some of you will be applying for PEng license, and there may be some experience requirement that you still have to meet, like some North American experience.
Mm-hmm.
If you have met all the other requirements like academics, English language competency, law and ethics, character and reputation, and you still have that experience requirement remaining, they will give you the choice of EIT or what's a new designation, provisional license.
Okay.
Okay, but we'll talk about that at the end. There are some designations available for people in your case,
Okay.
in your situation. Yeah. Okay, so once you submit all your documents, you fill out the forms that we're going to talk about today, and you give it to the APEGGA office, what happens? Well, somebody's going to evaluate it, and basically it's evaluated by the Board of Examiners. And the Board of Examiners are 18 academic examiners, 18 experience examiners, and 3 public members. So the 18 academic examiners are university professors from the University of Calgary and the University of Alberta. People who go to the University of Alberta probably know some of these people already. You may not know who they are, but they'll be looking at your documents. Experienced examiners. These are non-academic engineers working in industry, and they're going to be evaluating the documentation that you submit related to your experience. So they're going to be looking at your experience and how it's described and documented, and they'll judge the quality and the content there. 3 public members. Now these are not engineers. They don't have to be in any way related to engineering in their professional careers. They're simply representing the public. Because APEGGA is still a public organization, there's still a small, public voice in this process. They meet 11 to 12 times per year, depending on the volume of applications they get. At sort of the high point of the economic boom in recent years, I spoke with one of the members in the registration department at APEGGA, and they were meeting 12 times per year at that time, in 2007, evaluating 500 applications a month. Okay, so they're very busy, and you'll understand why some of these processes can take a little bit of time, and the forms are a little bit black and white and maybe a little bit inflexible. The reason for that is efficiency. They want to be able to process a maximum number of applications as efficiently at a certain quality as they can, and so the forms are pretty standard.
Question,
Yeah.
do you know how do they vote? What if maybe half of them say, okay, this qualifies for this person to be registered, and half of others say no? Do they vote? I mean, how do they evaluate?
I really don't know that detail, how they evaluate things. I would imagine it's fairly democratic,
Yeah, I'm asking because I can imagine if I went through the Canadian system and I received a document from somebody who went through another system, European or Tanzanian, they may not understand exactly what how those systems work. They could be equivalent, but they may not appear equivalent at the first glance. And that's why do they vote, or do they just decide unanimously? Or all of them, they have to agree. I don't know. Or do we have internationally trained also members in those?
In terms of, you're talking about education documents, they may not have some familiarity with the education. Is that what you were
even
referring
experience,
to?
because
Experience.
like here, the standards, if I'm talking about electrical engineering, they may be used to North American